action.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, I was just trying to play along with that intro music, doing the.
Oh,
I don't know what instrument that is, but
the instrument is elevator music. That's the instrument.
okay. There you go. That is an instrument all by itself, isn't it?
Instrument,
Hey,
elevator.
All right, you still haven't done anything with that hair.
I know.
Man,
I know.
You know, you're wasting a perfectly good head of hair, and it really bothers me.
I know. I did trim my beard. Thank you very much. I formed it, made it look better. This is more of a priority for me than this is right now.
All right. So I just want you to know, all week I was really concerned about your bad hair days.
Well, I can put my hat on if that will make you feel better. Make you feel less
triggered.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. While Ben is away, we'll have another elevator music interlude. Oh, there he's back. So
there we go.
There you go.
There you go. That way you're not
there
by yourself. Okay, wait for some people to come in.
Hey, what do we got? Comments?
I'm not seeing any yet.
No.
All right, we got one viewer though. All right.
All right.
So we'll go ahead and get into this. 0 viewers. Okay. Get this up here. See, like I was saying before, this is going to be a multiple episode topic because there's no way you can talk about the Crusades in just one video. But one really interesting about this topic is though. Oh, here we go. Good morning, Jacqueline.
Hey, Jacqueline's here. All right.
So one thing about the Crusades, as everyone enters and learns, this topic is deep, like super deep. You can't just talk about the Crusades in 1/2 hour and know everything. It's not possible. So this is going to be a multiple session thing. But as everyone can see by the title, the Crusades were absolutely justified. And our goal is to go through this reason as to why they are justified in the next, however many sessions. But yeah, so when anyone goes on the topic of the Crusades, something very interesting happens. You see very divisive audience. You see two sides of the spectrum. You see one side view the Crusades as a very dark time in Christian history. And they try to avoid the topic, or they try to say it was really bad. We don't want to talk about it. But then the other side is like, the other side doesn't justify the Crusades either. The other side says it was a dark time and the Muslim expansion was warranted. But there's a third perspective. The third point of view has only existed, I would say, within the past few years. The third point of view is the one we're going down. And that's the view of, no, the Crusades were absolutely justified. We shouldn't avoid talking about it. It happened. And it played a massive role in how the Christian faith evolved. And I mean the different sects between Orthodox, Catholicism, and Protestants. Okay. Yeah. So anyways, without going on a massive rant, okay, before we go any further, just want to let everyone know, I want to keep this as simple as possible. We're going to look at the big picture today. And in the next few sessions, we're going to dive deep, 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 deep. So, Crusades. Right off the bat, Joel, when you think of the Crusades...
Kenneth is with us, by the way.
Oh, good morning.
He's good for good Crusade sesh. So,
fantastic. Wow. So when I say the word Crusades, what typically comes to mind, Joel? Like what images come to mind?
Yeah, knights with big red crosses on their chests with swords and shields. Indiana Jones going into the cave.
Oh, right. The Last Crusade. Yeah.
Grail, where one guy chooses poorly and Indy chose wisely, right?
Right.
So, yeah, just the ancient tales of those things. it's kind of part of our lore that it comes up once in a while, usually in a movie or something like that. But I actually, when you're talking about how it has a bad reputation, when I was in college, I was part of Campus Crusade for Christ. And they have since changed their name. They have taken Crusade out of it because of the, when you're ministering to Muslims and you say Crusade, to them, they have a completely different view than we do. So yeah, it's still relevant. Like, what's happening in Europe. Okay. That side of the world, that most other cultures don't have linear memories or linear history. It's it all comes back. What happened 1,000 years ago is just as relevant today as it was back then. And that's says a lot about what's happening in Europe now, where it's basically being conquered like they tried to do, 1,000 years ago. So,
and on that note, there's two things. You mentioned films. Lucas here suggests Kingdom of Heaven. And Kingdom of Heaven came out in 05, 06. Great movie, but keep in mind, Kingdom of Heaven is an example of historical fiction. It covers the Crusades, but keep in mind, that movie was made by Ridley Scott, a great director, but he is a, admitted atheist, so he wasn't making the film to be 100% accurate. He's making it to be good entertainment. And while the film does do some things pretty well, like it shows a great representation of King Baldwin, the leper king, it also tries to spin the history to be balanced. Like, oh, well, the Christians, the Muslims were equally at fault. Like they were equally good and equally bad. And the truth of the matter is the Crusades are complex and there were broken human beings on all sides. That's true. But there's a big thing that people don't like to talk about. And the fact is, I'll start with this. The fact is the Crusades were absolutely warranted. They were justified. And they were not Europeans conquering the whole land just to conquer. That's not what happened. It was Europeans coming together in a massive show of force from all walks of life to reclaim and defend what had already been conquered by the Muslim expansion. That's it. That's the main thesis. That's the main key point. Problem is, when you say things like that, you start offending people. You start getting people mad and angry. Okay? We're going to dive more into that as we go on. But today's session is going to be the big picture. And as Christians, the ultimate point is, how do we respond to other beliefs? How do we treat other religions? How do we view people in our daily walks of life who have other gods, other beliefs? Do we conquer their lands, enslave their people, and put them and force them to convert? Or do we go out in the communities, minister, proclaim the gospel, and pray for them? Which path is the Christian path? Is it the path of conquest and onslaught and, forcing people to believe? Or is it the path of the apostles? Go out, spread the word, pray. Which one's the right way?
Well, the way the apostles also included bringing a sword along, selling your cloak to get a sword, when Jesus sent them out. So it wasn't a passive. We talked last week, the same guy that maybe you'll show him this week was talking about the difference between a pacifist and I always talk about the difference between a pacifist and a peacemaker. A pacifist doesn't want any conflict at all, so it enables evil. A peacemaker is ready for conflict, but will use it as a last resort.
Right.
So
a peacemaker will use that sword to defend, and will use that sword to protect the innocent.
Defend either yourself or offensively defend someone else.
Right.
And that's the key. And I think I mentioned that last week. That's the key that everybody misses.
Right. And so, I want to
To
show.
think, yeah, to think that everything was hunky dory in the Middle East, and all of a sudden all these Christians came is pretty much a fallacy.
So I'm going to show this video. It's 2 minutes, but it's a great summary of the Crusades. It gets right to the point. It cuts right to the issue, and there's hundreds of videos y'all can find to do your own research. But this is a great way to start it out. Here we go.
How can you justify the Crusades? Jesus wouldn't teach that.
Well, let me explain why the Crusades were justified and awesome. First, let's clear up what the Crusades were. They were a series of wars, starting in 1096, where Christian nations came together to defend the Holy Land and their faith from Islamic invasions. Modern people paint the Crusaders as bloodthirsty barbarians, as if they woke up one day and decided to attack peaceful Muslims. That's just not true. Let's talk facts. Islamic armies had expanded into the Christian world by force. The Holy Land, North Africa, Egypt, and Spain were all
Real quick, I want to talk about this. If people who are watching this, the screen here is showing a map, and the map is basically the Roman Empire. Okay. Now, as we all know, the timeline: Jesus was crucified, and he was resurrected during the reign of the Roman Empire. Okay. But then, as we all know, the Roman Empire split into the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. Okay. The Eastern Roman Empire was the side that converted to Christianity. That was the side that gave rise eventually to the Orthodox Church. And then that grew from that, to Catholicism in Italy. But the thing is, a lot of people seem to forget the Roman Empire was then led to Christianity. And Christianity spread all throughout the lands of the Roman Empire and beyond. And it was spread through the gospel, through the apostles, obviously spreading the gospel and all through that. But then something happened. Something exploded from the Arabian Peninsula. And after the death of, well, during the life of Muhammad and after he died, Islam, like the word exploded is the best word. Islam exploded. And it conquered by the sword. That's not my opinion. That is a historical fact. Islam conquered by the sword, and that's what they're going to focus on here.
North Africa, Egypt, and Spain were all predominantly Christian before they were conquered by Islamic forces starting in the 7th century. Christians living under Muslim rule were taxed heavily, had their rights restricted, and faced pressure to convert to Islam. By the 11th century, the Seljuk Turks controlled much of the Middle East and harassed Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. Churches were destroyed, Christian holy sites desecrated, and reports of violence spread. European leaders recognized that this conquest wasn't going to stop. If the Islamic conquest continued unchecked, Europe would fall.
But bro, didn't Jesus teach about peace? Shouldn't Christians turn the other cheek?
Yes, Christians are called to be peaceful, but Jesus never said to let evil destroy you, your family, or your faith. Defending your home, your loved ones, and the church is not contrary to Christian teaching. It's essential. If the Crusades hadn't happened, Christianity might have been wiped out in Europe. I mean, think about it. No prosperous Europe, no Renaissance, no Christian traditions. Instead, we would live under Sharia law, where being Christian could mean death. The Crusades are demonized today because powerful elites fear what happens when Christians unite. Imagine this: peasants, knights, kings, French, English, German, all fighting together for Christ. That unity is what made the Crusades incredible and a testament to the strength of the Christian faith. So the next time when someone asks you,
How can you justify the Crusades?
remind them that they were awesome. And by the way, I have created.
Anyway, so that's the main takeaway that a lot of people forget. The Crusades, the fact that they even happened was crazy. And there's multiple Crusades. There was a first Crusade, second Crusade, third, fourth. This was not just a small moment in time. This was a massive time in history. And the thing is, when you talk about what would have happened if these European nations from all different walks of life, all different systems, if they didn't come together and if they didn't go fight in the Crusades, it is very possible that we wouldn't have had Western civilization to begin with. It's very possible we wouldn't have had momentous times in history like the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution. You obviously wouldn't have Protestants whatsoever. The Reformation would have never happened.
Yes.
It's all these things you don't really think about. Now, to be clear, let's make this very clear. I am not saying that every single Christian was perfect, and I'm not saying that Orthodox, Catholics, and Protestants are all perfect. Far from that. Every sect has their own issues. But when you get broken human beings, peasants, nobles, merchants, clergy, all uniting for one cause, which is to stop the onslaught of the Islamic belief, that's huge. That is massive. Now, this next video I'm going to show y'all, it's a little dated, but this professor did a great job at showing just how huge Muslim expansion was. And it shows how long it lasted. The impact that Christian armies had in the Crusades was very important. It was huge, but it was small compared to how long Muslim armies conquered by the sword. Check this out.
And here it starts. Islam burst out of the Arabian Peninsula and immediately starts attacking the Middle East. And notice that it doesn't take long until
every little red dot was a battle that happened. And the green color is the expansion of Islam.
they're crossing the Mediterranean and attacking southern France and Spain. Notice something here. Most people think of Islam, they think of Arabs, they think of desert. And yet here we see that Islam is projecting power throughout the Mediterranean.
So between 880 and 900 AD, Islam had already conquered this massive portion of Southwest Asia, Northern Africa, and most of Spain. And there were additional battles all across the Mediterranean, Italy, Greece, Sicily, Turkey. You can see it all here. This is before the Crusades actually started. The Crusades weren't called by the Pope until like just after 1000 AD, if I remember correctly. Point is, this was not a Christian onslaught on innocent people. This was a Christian response to a Islamic onslaught.
Notice how the little islands of the Mediterranean are getting hammered. The navy of Islam would attack coastal towns, kill, rob, rape, and then take slaves. So this whole battle map, as it unfolds, you're seeing slaves being taken. Over 1 million slaves were taken out of Europe into the Islamic world. That's something you don't think about much, but it's absolutely true. There were over 200 battles fought in Spain alone. And we also see, however, on the East Coast in Turkey, that Islam is trying to break into Europe. Now,
So now it's 1320. Between 1320 and 1340, Islam has almost conquered all of Turkey. Now they're moving into Eastern Europe, like Armenia and that region. There's a reason why Orthodox Christians have a deep, deep-seated resentment towards Islam, because they are the first ones to be conquered by the Muslims. Here, you can tell the Crusades are happening. They are currently happening, but they're focused mainly on the Holy Land, Jerusalem, Acre, that whole region. And the European Crusaders created Crusader states, but that was small compared to the massive expansion of Islam.
what's going to happen is in Spain, this ongoing fight that lasted for 400 years, is the Christians are going to push back the Muslims. But now then what has happened over in the East is that Constantinople has fallen, and now then Eastern Europe is getting hammered. The jihad now comes to Eastern Europe. It's pushed out now of Spain. Northern Africa is now completely Islamic. The Middle East is completely Islamic. This is all jihad, relentless jihad. And why is it so relentless? Well,
Now, by 1700, you can tell Spain is no longer controlled by Islam because of the Reconquista. We'll talk about that on another session. But now, by 1700, all of North Africa, Middle East, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Armenia, bits of Ukraine, Romania are now Muslim.
well,
This is long after the Crusades are typically done in our mindset.
Muhammad was relentless in his jihad. And these people are good students of Islam, and so it's against the kafir, on and on. It was traditional that when the Sultan came to power, the brand new Sultan, he would immediately try to launch new wars because he was going to be noted in his Islamic history as to how well he fought against the kafir.
And so by 1920, World War I just finished, right? And of course, now you had the Ottoman Empire that collapsed after World War I. But that's how long this Muslim expansion lasted. That onslaught was from the 600s all the way to freaking 1920 with the Ottoman Empire. That's huge. And then when you compare to the actual geography of the Crusades, like we think of these so-called evil Europeans coming to decimate the whole land, look at what actually happened.
Of the Crusaders. Let's watch it and make a comparison. And so it begins. The Crusades enter into Turkey and the Middle East. Battles go on, but aren't there far fewer than you thought there might be? And here we go. The last battles are fought, and that is the end of the crusade.
So when you compare the narratives of evil Europeans coming over and decimating these peaceful Muslims, is just factually untrue. Now, am I saying all Christians are perfect? No. Am I saying all Muslims are evil? Not necessarily. But here's the thing. When you compare the geography of both events, you realize this was completely one-sided. And so, as we get into Scripture, this is the key takeaway. What do we make of this? How are we supposed to take this into our day-to-day lives? What's the big deal? Why should I care that Muslim expansion happened that long, was that big, and is still happening today? Why should I care? Well, let me show you this. Let me share my screen. We're going to look at 1 John chapter 4. Now, Joel, if you could do me a favor and read for me 1 and 2, and then I'll read 3 and 4.
Okay. Oops. I just hold on 1 second.
Sure. And again, this is 1 John chapter 4.
Why don't we switch? Why don't you do the first two? I'll do the second two because my computer is pretty much gone nuts right here.
No problem. So 1 John chapter 4. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. Every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. Those who do not confess Jesus Christ is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you heard is coming, and now is already in the world. I mean, think about that for a second. This is coming from one of the apostles. This is coming from a guy who witnessed the life of Jesus, the death of Jesus, and the resurrection of Jesus. And this guy is telling people who are listening to him, hey, listen, I'm not saying you should go out into the world and slaughter people who don't agree with you. What I am saying is be mindful that any spirit, any person who claims to know the Spirit but doesn't accept Jesus Christ is the spirit of the Antichrist. Unless I'm misinterpreting this, Joel, like that's pretty clear cut. What do you think?
Looking at that map, and I have no doubt that that lesson is accurate. No reason, because it was like I said, I didn't realize exactly how long Muslim expansion lasted, but I do know that there are traces of that conquering in all those areas now, all the areas where that have been reconquisted, and not only in the Eastern Orthodox. I know it's still going on in Armenia. That's one of the things I mentioned yesterday. I did a podcast on the genocide in Nigeria, but there's also other things happening around the world that we're not focused on because we're so focused on Israel and Gaza. But there's a continuing persecution of Armenians going on right now. And what the Armenians call Artsakh and the Muslims call Nagorno-Karabakh. So there's still that resentment and still that conflict going on. And I know in India, one time I heard, how could India have been effectively ruled? Now, the most people Britain ever had in India was like 50,000 people, and India's, was close to 1 billion people. And like, how could Britain rule all of India with so few people? And the answer was because the Indian people knew that Britain would protect them from the Muslims. If the Muslims came back into India, that was the last thing they wanted, because I've heard some numbers up to 100, 200, up to 400 million people killed in India over the years of all this time that they were ruling India. So, it might be the biggest story in the world, in world history. This what would have to be 1,300 year almost movement of Islam conquering, I don't know, a third of the world, maybe a fourth of the world. I don't know. But it's, again, it's something more than, because we're Westerners. We don't have circular memories. I think I mentioned this before. We have linear memories. What happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago is forgotten. It's irrelevant in our culture. People don't have those memories, let alone what happened, in 1945 or 1865 or 1776, right? But for most of the other world, this is still very fresh and very real because they have circular memories. Whatever happened in the past comes back. And it's not seen as ancient history. It's not seen as irrelevant. It's seen as very relevant. So this story is ongoing. It's obviously ongoing. And in Europe right now, it's an ongoing story for the Muslims who are coming into Europe now. They're simply doing what their ancestors tried to do. They're conquering. They still have that same conquering spirit. It's not by the sword. It's by the weakness. They're exploiting the weakness. And what the guy said last week on the video, we saw the apostasy of Europe that's given up. They're just surrendering. And it's interesting to see the dynamic there.
This
It's
dynamic,
tragic and heartbreaking, but go ahead.
Well, and the whole dynamic, taking a step back from that historical point of view, conquest is human history. Conquest has always happened in human history. And let's be honest with each other. Like, you still had bloodshed and conquest during the time of the Reformation. Like, yeah, that happened, absolutely. When you compare the long-term, ongoing conquest of the Muslim belief and compare that to the bloodshed that happened between the small time of the Reformation, it's night and day. The bloodshed from the Reformation, or even from the Great Schism between Orthodox and Catholics, whatever bloodshed happened there was small compared to the ongoing conquest of Islam. And so, to wrap up today's session, next session, we're going to dive deeper into the Crusades. We're going to look at the groups that are involved, the people involved. And the main thing of today is understand the Crusades were justified. You have all these imperfect, broken human beings from all these different nations coming together and say, look, this is getting out of hand. We need to create a bulwark, a defense against this expansion. And while we do that, we also need to at least try to reclaim the Holy Land. And some crusades were successful, some were not as successful. But no other time in history, at least to my knowledge, have diverse nations united under one single cause. Not like the Crusades. And so that's where we're at, Patriots. Anyway,
interesting. Look at the time, man. I wasn't even watching the time. We're over time.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, everyone have a wonderful day, Patriots. I know we kind of went over a little bit, but I think that's okay.
See you guys.
All right, guys. Joel, if you can close this out.
Oh, just what I said. Everything's circular to most of the world. And to us, if we don't understand this, we're not going to understand what's going on now. So it's important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Patriots, have a wonderful day. God's in charge. Take care.